Amber. I'm a social worker out here at Bethany Home in Brandon, for those of you who don't know me. So today we're going to talk about residents' rights, confidentiality, abuse, and neglect reporting. So residents have quite a few different rights. A lot of them seem just like almost redundant to even say, because like they have the right to say no to different things, even if it's a poor decision. They have a right to be informed about what their rights are, right to their privacy and confidentiality, things like that. Some of the things that we don't think about that they have a right to is the right to choose their own physician. Sometimes we think it's silly that some residents choose to go out of the facility to appointments just because it tends to create more work for their family with having to meet them at appointments and things like that. But they do have that right. Right to voice grievances. You know, they can't get in trouble for speaking out and basically sometimes even just complaining. They have a right to see our facility survey results. So those are located on each of the neighborhoods near the TV. And they have a right whether or not they want to work. Just some more rights. So they have a right to participate in different activities. Right to privacy with sending their mail. That kind of goes back to their right to privacy. The right to use their telephone in privacy. So if we go into a resident's room and they're on the phone, we should excuse ourselves. Right to have visitors, so we don't have visiting hours. They can have visitors whenever they want. Heck, sometimes we have family members who choose to stay with them. They have a right to share a room with their spouse. On Bethany Meadows, they have this a lot more commonly, or a lot more frequently, than we do on the home side, but they have a right to share the room with their spouse. They have a right to self-administer their meds as long as they can show that that's safe. And they have a right to file complaints with the state. They have a right to organize and participate in different like family and resident right to have information about different advocacy groups and the long-term care ombudsman. And they have a right to remain in this facility unless they no longer meet needs. We can no longer meet their needs, which doesn't typically happen with us having the full continuum of care between our 3 different facilities. We deem that they're a safe risk. They fail to pay. Obviously, there's a whole lot of other things that go into that. Wow. If for some reason we cease to operate, or they no longer qualify, whether it be for independent living, assisted living, or skilled nursing, or if their welfare requires that they change rooms or transfer. So we have a local ombudsman. His name is Brad Matheson. Basically, his role is just to advocate for residents and their rights. Sometimes we'll actually call him if we can get a hold of him. And one of the things that he does is help us with sticky situations. For example, there's a resident over on Willow who spends a lot of time with him, simply just because she has a lot of things, or a lot of different opinions on things. And so she can help us with that. If we have families who maybe are not the most easy to work with, or we have residents that are talking about consistently eloping, things like that, he could be helpful with. Abuse and neglect. So there's 6 different kinds of abuse. There's neglect, physical, verbal, sexual, emotional, and then misappropriation of funds. Neglect is typically the big one that we can get caught in a sticky situation with. That's why, like Angie and even our dentist consultant talked about, documenting if residents are refusing cares. Otherwise, it could look like we're just not offering them, because neglect can fall into failure to provide those things. Physical abuse, so use of physical force that can result in injury. Verbal abuse is just saying things that or making gestures that willingly degrades people or our residents. There's sexual abuse, so sexual harassment falls into that too. If there's coercion or even sexual assault. Emotional abuse, so verbal or nonverbal infliction of anguish, pain, or distress, which causes emotional suffering. So just anything that you say or do that can kind of set them in a way that brings across that true suffering. And then misappropriation of funds, so just wrong use of their money or their belongings. The thing that we offer for all of our residents is trust accounts. So that way they don't even have to worry about having money in their rooms. That's definitely helpful. Don't have to worry about that money going missing or anything like that. Forgetting they spend it is another one. So with all of us working in these types of facilities, we're all considered mandatory reporters. And that's because we work with an at-risk population. So what the law requires us as mandatory reporters is to report any abuse and neglect. Whether that's something you suspect or something you can prove. And that needs to be reported to your immediate supervisor. Ideally, it would be immediately, but otherwise just as soon as possible. One thing our nursing staff have to do is complete reports to the Department of Health. So every time we have suspected or confirmed abuse and neglect, then they have to complete what's called a DOH report, and that needs to be done within 24 hours. Best practice that we tell all our nurses is doing it by the end of the shift. If that's something you don't feel comfortable completing on your own as a nurse, then talking with your supervisor, whether that be Katie, Amanda, Joanne, to kind of help you through that process. And then the last thing is confidentiality. So one of the rights that we talked about was that they have the right to privacy and to have their protected healthcare information kept private. So in 1996, Congress passed a law called HIPAA, so Healthcare Information Privacy Protection Act, and this is what established national standards as to what we were supposed to do with individuals' medical records or other personal health information. And basically they decided that needs to be protected. Like, you wouldn't want anybody knowing your healthcare information, so we should keep that private for our residents as well. Some examples of that would be like what their diagnosis is, what medications they're on, even just like their payer status. So are they Medicaid or are they Medicare? Who their insurance is, things like that. Do they fall a lot? Do you guys have any other examples of what should be protected? What are some things that aren't protected that we typically think are?
If a person is a resident.
Mm-hmm. So that's why any, like, Tom, Dick, or Joe can walk up to the front desk and say, can you point me in the direction of so-and-so? Or can you tell me what room they're in? That's not protected information, so we can tell that.
Shouldn't we ask the person that's asking if we don't know ourselves? Are they a family member or a friend, you know, this type of thing?
Technically, it doesn't really matter because that's not protected healthcare information. Now, in the past, we've had residents who have very complicated family situations, and we knew that they didn't want to see so-and-so or so-and-so. Then in that case, we would ask, just because we know they specifically don't want to see those people. But otherwise, technically, no. We don't need to know that.
Okay.
So if someone comes to the front desk to serve papers, we have a right to tell them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Any other questions? Those are all good. Just really through that. We don't want to. Oh, yeah. We'll go with the quiz. There we go. So, list 5 rights every resident has at Bethany.
Use on top.
Mm-hmm.
Right, say no.
Yep.
To examine facility survey results.
Mm-hmm.
Use telephone and privacy.
Yep.
Gamble.
Huh?
They have the right to gamble.
They have a right to make a poor decision, so yeah, technically. Who's our local ombudsman?
Yes.
Or what is his role?
Advocate for residents and their rights.
Yep. Suspicion of abuse or neglect should be reported to immediate supervisors when?
Immediately or within 2 hours.
Yep. In cases of abuse or neglect, misappropriation of resident funds, injury of unknown cause, or falls with head injury, supervisors file a report with the Department of Health. An incident report is completed and reported with the DOH is made, and a report is made with the DOH is made to be made within
24 hours
Yep.
or end of shift.
Yep, best practice is end of shift. We're gonna remember things better if we do it right away versus waiting until the next day, even if it's within 24 hours. Define mandated report.
Person that works with at-risk population.
So that's someone who's required by law to report abuse or neglect. So we are mandated reporters because we work with this at-risk population. What privacy law enacted in 1996 established national standards to protect individuals' medical records and other personal health information?
Did cut off.
Yep. Okay, let's go to the matching. Failure to provide goods or services necessary to avoid physical harm or mental illness or anguish. Careless oversight. E?
Neglect.
Oh, D. E. I heard D. This is what you're referring. The use of physical force that may result in injury, pain, or impairment, physical punishment, confinement, or unlawful use of restraints. Mm-hmm. Deliberate misplacement or wrongful use of belongings or money without consent, exploitation. Sexual harassment, coercion, or assault. Yep. The use of written or gestured language that willfully disparages or degrades individuals regardless of their ability to comprehend, to belittle, slight, or reduce esteem. D. Or sorry.
The B, it's B.
Yeah. Hmm? B. And then verbal or nonverbal anguish, infliction of anguish, pain, or distress, which inflicts emotional suffering, threats, failure to offer choice, isolation. D. So the big difference between verbal and emotional abuse is emotional abuse causes that emotional suffering. Verbal abuse just degrades them. Like, I shouldn't say just degrades them, but would degrade them compared to causing them that emotional suffering. Any questions about the quiz? Okay. So then, next you guys are gonna go to the hospitality room. We have